The Talmud asks, when are human beings examined? Amar Reish Lakish said, B'sha'ah she'ovrim al hagesher, when they are crossing on the bridge. Gesher v'tulo? Talmud asks, just a bridge? No other time? Ema say, ke'ein gesher, anything like a bridge. So the surface question is, when does God pull a person's file and hold them accountable? So whatever they've got coming to them is likely going to happen then, right? Do not take that literally, right? I do not believe in direct reward and punishment by God. And the question they're asking isn't really about physical danger anyway. What they're really saying, what they want to know is, what is the paradigmatic place of moral vulnerability? When are we in spiritual danger? Most likely to cause harm and be harmed by our own bad behavior and wrongdoing. And their answer is, it's crossing a bridge or anything like it. Liminality. When we are in transition, personal transitions or times of significant social change. Like now, when seemingly everything about the context in which we live is shifting, like the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Why are we in spiritual danger then? Because liminality is scary. As we said earlier, we don't know where we are, our identity is slippery, and we feel out of control. So whenever the ground shifts beneath us, we are at risk of bad behavior, of self-protection sliding into selfishness, or of compromising our ethics to maintain an illusion of control, or of choosing perceived safety over our values. This is when the spiritual depth that we have developed or not, the strength of our character or its weakness, the nature and power of our moral commitments and values or lack thereof will either be there for us, keeping us on the straight and narrow, as I spoke of yesterday, or not. And the bigger the transition, the more vulnerable we are to not. This is one of the reasons why we're seeing so much terrible, terrible behavior in American society, from horrific violence to childish acting out on airplanes and in stores. It's because this is a big-time liminal moment, and as a society, many of us lack the character to manage well the transitions we are in. Recently, a friend said to me, you know, things are so crazy. I think people don't even know what to worry about first. And she said, like, should I worry that my body is filled with plastic, even though I eat organic? Should I worry about, you know, that the climate's going to change? Should I worry about democracy? Should I worry about anti-Semitism? Like, I don't know what this. So, and she said, so people just check out. And I want to say, worry about this, about what times of disruption can do to our souls. Even the happiest, most sought-after change entails loss. Yesterday, we talked about Jacob on the banks of the Yabok River, right? He was very afraid. Externally, he was afraid that his brother was going to attack him. Didn't happen. Internally, he was afraid of the transformation happening within him. He wasn't wrong to be afraid. Yes, he emerges blessed and empowered, and also wounded. He limps ever after. Or the other biblical text we talked about on transition, Moses on Mount Har, on Har HaAvarim, the mountain of transitions. From there, he will see the promised land, and there he will die. It's his literal death, yes, of course, but it's also a metaphor for us. However beautiful and promising any vision of the future may be, the self as we know it in this moment isn't going there. To get there, some part of us, the self that we were, will, so to speak, die along the way. All genuine transition is like that, national or personal. Teshuvah, the work of these days, is like that. You start working on yourself and your character and your relationships, and if you're really open to the process, you can't be 100% sure of where it will lead. You're not in control. Some relationships will deepen, some may end. We may discover that it's time to let go of some parts of our lives and ourselves, even beloved parts. Learning is like that. George Bernard Shaw, great quote, Major Barbara, you have learned something that always feels at first as if you had lost something. Vida, know that a person needs to cross a very, very narrow bridge. Back to our friend Rav Nachman of Bratslav. Yesterday we talked about one meaning of what he said, of the Gesher Tzar Ma'od, balancing and connecting seeming opposites. This is the second. Nachman is saying we are always, always, always on a bridge from here to there in the process of change, somewhere between who we were yesterday and who we'll be tomorrow. Life is not primarily stable with aberrational moments of great change. Life is liminality, a gesher tzar me'od, with aberrational moments of seeming stability. And of course he's right. And he's not telling us anything we don't already know. He's telling us something we don't want to know, right? We are reeling from so much upheaval in the world. And Nachman comes and says, yeah, this is the nature of life. You're lucky to live long enough, you're going to live through interesting times. V'haklal v'ha'ikar, and the main principle, the main essence is shelo yitfachet klal, not to give in to the fear. One reason he emphasizes fear here is precisely because fear is what's spiritually dangerous about change. It's not the bridge that's morally risky, it's the fear on the bridge. That's what makes us likely to behave badly. But there's another reason too. Remember yesterday I said that Nachman's great-grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov, had taught about the soul having to cross a very narrow bridge after death, transitioning to the next world, and how Nachman took the image and transformed its meaning, and he said, no, it's not just after death, it's all of life, right? Well, Nachman changed the meaning in another way too. Because what the Baal Shem Tov taught was this bridge from this world to the next. The narrow bridge is very stressful and scary, right? It's a big time liminal moment, this world to the next. So the best thing to do is to run across it really, really fast, right? Now, I'm making light a little bit of his teaching, but it's pretty much a direct quote. Like, that's basically what he says. And it's how we often deal with periods of uncertainty. Just get through it as fast as we can. I just want to know the answer. Like, I just don't want to sit in the change. Comes Nachman and says to his great-grandfather, that's exactly wrong. A story. It's one that Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Peshishcha used to tell young people who came to him for the first time. He used to tell them the story of Rabbi Isaac, son of Rabbi Yekel, in Krakow. Here's the story. After many years of great poverty, which had never shaken his faith in God, Rabbi Isaac dreamed that someone bade him look for a treasure in Prague, under the bridge, which leads to the king's palace. When the dream recurred a third time, Rabbi Isaac prepared for the journey, and he set out for Prague. But the bridge was guarded day and night, and he did not dare to start digging. Nevertheless, he went to the bridge every morning and kept walking around it until evening. Finally, the captain of the guards who'd been watching him asked in a kindly way, whether he was looking for something or waiting for someone. Rabbi Isaac told him of the dream which had brought him here from a faraway country. The captain laughed. And so, to please the dream, you poor fellow wore out your shoes to come here? As for having faith in dreams, if I'd had faith in dreams, I would have had to have got going when a dream once told me to go to Krakow and dig for treasure under the stove in the room of a Jew. Isaac, son of Yekel, that was his name. Isaac, son of Yekel. I can just imagine what it would be like, how I should have to try every house over there where half of the Jews are named Isaac and the other half Yekel. And he laughed again. Rabbi Isaac bowed, traveled home, dug up the treasure under the stove, and built the house of prayer, which is now known as Reb Isaac's Shul. So it's a little Wizard of Oz-esque, right? There's no place like home. You need a journey away to make us come back and appreciate it. The question is the bridge just a generic plot point? Could be anything, a well, a gate, whatever. Or does it have particular significance? I'm sure you'll be shocked to learn, I think it's significant. And you'll get why if instead of thinking, oh, the treasure was really at home under the stove the whole time, we actually take the dream at its word. Look for a treasure under the bridge. If the bridge is liminality, the message is don't avoid liminal times, don't rush through them, interrogate them, dwell in them, be present. Go to the bridge and dig under it because there's treasure there. The treasure is the teaching, the map for how to find the immense possibility within your own soul and the riches in precisely the time and place in which you are, both personally and, yes, even this crazy, scary, interesting time in which we are living. Narrow bridges are great teachers. They test our inner core and reveal what's there. Our limitations, weaknesses, ego needs, of course, and also our strengths, our resilience, our generosity, our truest loves, our deepest values. They push us to discover new aspects of ourselves, new things about the world, and new ways of being. And it applies to all kinds of change, societal and personal, and especially the outgrowing the flower pot kind I spoke about earlier. Remember, the Rebbe, Simcha Bunim, would tell the story to seekers, people who came wanting to serve God, to grow and evolve and be of use, make a difference and find meaning. Of course, it's natural to want to rush through uncertainty. But if crossing the narrow bridge is life, then obviously our goal isn't to get across it as fast as we can. If we do that, we miss it. It's about living as deeply as we can, taking the time to learn and teach as much as we can along the way. Liminal moments. If we have the courage and wisdom to seize them and hold on, I will not let you go until you bless me, offer tremendous opportunity and hope. This is what Nachman is saying. They're the source of our vitality, a feature, not a bug, of being human. And this, as I said before, is where religion comes in. Religion can indeed be a bridge over troubled water, a support, but not as a trivial panacea, don't be afraid, it'll all be fine, but in helping us manage our fears so we can stay more present in moments of transition, that is, in our lives, right? Everything I said about ritual. The Yumim Noraim are the dream that says, go to the bridge and dig under it. And they hold us safe and honor-bound in the company of others while we dig. And it's one reason why the now well-documented, quote, de-churching of America, the decline in religious affiliation and participation in communal prayer across the country, across religions, is such a disaster. It's an enormous loss to humanity, it is a tragedy. Because what else in life serves this function? Not just for an individual alone in a therapeutic context, that's important, but societally, together, as a cultural phenomenon. The crisis of religion, which is a combination of de-churching and bad churching, we have to acknowledge that, is related to all the other problems we face. Without religion and religious ritual, most people don't have holding spaces to mark liminality, to be pushed to notice and stay present, to be held there, with enough safety on the narrow bridge, with other people willing to be on the narrow bridge and say, this is scary, but it's sacred scary, because this is how we live life rather than running from it. And so too few of us are able to push past the fear of loss and find the treasure under the narrow bridge, the potential for good, for holiness, for wholeness. And we're all in spiritual, ethical danger. And it's not just the ritual holding function of religion we are losing. What replaces religion's role in spiritual education, developing the inner resources we need, virtue, moral strength, character, that we talked about yesterday, to manage the inevitable fear? What replaces religion's role in turning us into bridge people with thick, deep connections to each other, higher values, God, bridge people who help each other across the troubled waters? You know, I have to say, people think they don't need to come to services because they mistakenly think that services are about what happens up here on the bima, right? And maybe it's boring or it's irrelevant. It doesn't speak to me. But no, the essence isn't what happens up here, it's what happens there, in your heart. This is the container, right? This is the bridge. You're the traveler making the crossing. We're just here to hold you and to remind you that a person needs to cross a very, very narrow bridge, and that the main principle, the most important thing, is shelo yitfached klal. I have done my level best to avoid translating that directly. And the reason is because it's a made-up word. Nachman made up a word that doesn't exist in Hebrew. Sometimes when it's sung, you may hear V'ha'ikar, v'ha'ikar, lo lefached klal, which would mean the main thing is don't be afraid at all. That is wrong. It is not what he said. It is silly and harmful to tell people don't be afraid. It is bad Torah and it is bad religion. What Nachman did is he made up a reflexive form of the verb to fear, lefached, to say something much more subtle. So I always thought it meant something like, don't make yourself afraid, right? Like, don't frighten yourself or churn fear, which, by the way, is good advice, if that's what it means. But now I think something else. Now I think lo yitfached klal isn't addressed to our feelings. It's addressed to our character, to what we do with fear. It means don't allow the scariness of change of the world to turn you into a fearful person, running as fast as you can, becoming small and limited and angry and hate-filled and causing a lot of harm, and missing out on your own vitality. Or maybe it could mean don't become afraid of yourself, of your own evolution. Sometimes it's scary just to think about our own mutability, the way our bodies and our minds and our identities can change. To discover I'm not quite as solidly me as I thought I was. And then, like, who am I exactly? I think it's one reason that aging is really hard. And I suspect also, aside from politicians cynically stoking fear for political gain, I think it's why some people find gender fluid and trans people so scary. Because those people have the courage to acknowledge that identity is a little more fluid than most of us like to think our own identities are. And if you lack that courage, it's really scary to witness. Sometimes I think we're afraid that we might discover we're not up to it, that what we'll find within will be unable, inadequate, unworthy. And actually, the original context of Nachman's teaching about the Gesher Tzarma Ode is that. Most people don't know this. It's one line in a very long teaching about needing strength and encouragement when one feels unworthy. Or conversely, we may fear our own power and potential and what it would mean if we fully owned it. So maybe Nachman was saying, yes, we are all crossing a very narrow bridge all the time. And when you're really aware that you're on it, when you know you're changing, because who you were isn't going to make it in this totally new world, or because you're striving, or you're aging, or you're the flower who's outgrown the pot, because you have to, or because you want to, or all of the above. Maybe lo yitfached means don't become afraid of the self you are becoming. One last thing before we turn to Musaf. Remember the guards around the bridge? Because of whom Reb Isaac was too afraid to start digging? Who are the guards at your bridges? Fear, self-doubt, self-protection, comfort, resistance to change. What's keeping you from interrogating change, from being curious and learning from it, from really showing up on these high holy days and being fully present in the ever-changing process of your own life?